Hello, guys. My name is Samuel, and I will be talking about the LinkedIn coding standards for JavaScript. Okay. So, goals of this slide presentation are to get you, if you don't already know, the LinkedIn JS guidelines, and kind of understand where are some of the why behind the guidelines. You know, sometimes the guidelines feel a lot like just rules that say, hey, live in this box, and knowing the reasons why is really important, because it just makes you, actually want to enforce these rules on your own as well. And the nice thing with the kind of related to the last point is that the pitfalls will it'll help you, or following the guidelines will help you avoid the common pitfalls and recognize that code standards are cool. Woo. Okay. That didn't go over so well. All right, so let's see, coding requirements. They'll help you write better JS with less errors. And they do this by addressing two things. Kind of getting you to know the little JavaScript nuances and all the other reasons, readability, maintainability, and then styling, spacing, just making sure that all the code has a cohesive look and feel to it, so that when you read it, it's not one thing and then another thing that has totally different conventions. So, the nuances. One of the nuances is semicolons. Depending on who you read, and even Brendan and I, JavaScript is kind of like a hodgepodge of a lot of different ideas. And the story goes that it was written in like 10 days. So, all that, you can, like I said, there's a lot of different things there. So you can write, training I won't.
This is the more important presentation, right?
Exactly. If I can just get my mouse there. All right. Oh. Okay. So you can write JavaScript with or without semicolons. And JavaScript does have a automatic semicolon insertion mechanism, but it's not really good. So we'll look at some examples. So if you wrote this and ran it, this works out okay. And the insertion will say, well, you hit a function, so it assumes that those are two different statements. But if you look at these two, it's, imagine this isn't here. But if you look at those two, and you leave them to the JavaScript parser to look at them, you will get, anybody know what you'll get? What's that?
First it would be a math and second would be a function call.
What does push return?
What's that? Oh, push. It'll append anything to the array. Does
it have a return value?
I don't think it does.
Oh, okay.
It might. Anybody? No. Okay. So what he said was right. So it'll append those two and say, well, C, does it have a property named Apple? And then they'll just blindly call the push on it, so that could, and more than likely, will return an error. Same with this one. Well, this one actually kind of executes in a really weird way. if C happens to be a function, it'll pass this, and whatever comes out of it will get you either blue or not blue. But that's not what you wanted to begin with. Yes?
Sorry, I just wanted to comment on the question somebody asked over there. They asked if like push returns something. Actually returns something. Will return the length of the array that after it has been pushed.
Okay, all right. There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, any questions with that? Yes?
So when does it know that it needs to, is there like some rule of thumb that it knows when to do this, or?
There is, it tries to guess.
Okay.
So, that's why I'm saying that it was kind of the weird hodgepodge. So to avoid this kind of it trying to guess, you put them explicitly, and it tells the parser, this is exactly what I want. That way you're not left to the parser's, whims. Right? And then there's objects and arrays. And again, going back to that point that I made before, there's many ways to do things, but there are performance costs everywhere. So here you can create the new object using the new object and go about assigning it values. Or you can go about it with the object literal and just plan to go about assigning properties. And not only is this way more concise, it ends up being a lot faster when you look at performance. And likewise is for arrays. You can go about, or you can use the new array, but just using the literal with the square brackets will get you the same result, but it'll do it a lot faster. Any questions? No? For kind of all the other reasons that I mentioned earlier. So in LinkedIn, we use the two spaces and not tabs, where if any of you have written JavaScript before, usually it's tabs and 4 spaces, but here they use that just for consistency of code from back end and front end. And also using the Unix line endings and not the Windows ones. If you do write, edit files in Windows, why? I don't know why, but if you do, you'll find, in Vim or Emacs, if you choose to use those, fancy little Control M all over your files. So to avoid that, just use the Unix line endings. And then you'll want to remove all debugger statements from your code. Yeah. Any questions thus far? All right. And other things, avoid hard-coded URLs in JavaScript. So if you're more than likely in JSP land, so passing in all URLs to your JavaScript using the URL link. And same goes with your I18N strings. And you really want to avoid putting any kind of plain text or just English text in your JavaScript. If any of you have ever done any work pulling systems from just being English to trying to be I18N, it's a really big pain. And since here we already have the infrastructure, why not just go ahead and use it now? So you'll use I think that's one too many bangs. So again, if you pretend that this one doesn't exist, then you'll get properly escaped code. And then our coding standards. And coding standards will help you write good clean JavaScript. Don't pay attention to the typos. And all right, so performance. One of the biggest issues, just performance issues on the client side, is page reflows, and you'll want to try to avoid those at all costs. And here, what a page flow happens when you modify an element so that it ends up affecting not only its layout, but the layout of other, say, child or other nodes on the page. And it's a really big pain that Opera here notes this, that it's just slowed down, and especially in devices with low processing power. And on top of that, I added in slow browsers. So if you look at or not optimize JavaScript in older browsers, say IE 6 or 7, you'll see that it rendering is a lot slower. So I want to try to avoid that. And how you avoid the reflows are writing the DOM only once. That way it doesn't, you don't write once and then add more to, cause more reflow. And if you're gonna add anything to the DOM, removing, say, a container or an empty one and shoving things into that container and then reappending that to the DOM. That way there's only one real reflow happening and not, n reflows. And lastly, using classes to update styling instead of directly modifying the style. So, you drill down to your element and you say that, my div dot style, that background color equals red.
How does that affect the reflows?
That
is it just that changing the class changes all of the values at once or something? Or is there something I'm not getting on that?
That's it. Okay. It's just that my understanding is that by doing it through the class, it's faster with CSS since you're not just putting it in the DOM. Whereas if you do that with the JavaScript, it manipulates the DOM and shifts things around. But somebody that's, anybody?
I assume what this means is that if you want a block to look different, to just change the class that's assigned to the element, as opposed to going and changing the style on when it says use classes.
But I'm guessing here, if you want to, say, grow it or any of that, using the class is better. And tell you the truth, I can't think of why, but I've seen it in practice where the class handles it or works a lot better and is a lot smoother. Whereas if you tinker around with the JavaScript, it just performs much more poorly.
Okay.
Hopefully that was
No,
sufficient.
I think I'm just going to take a guess and assume that when you change the class, that the layout engine looks at all of the stuff that's changed at one fell swoop and does the new layout. And when you tinker and take them in one at a time, each time you do it, it tries to relay it out or starts the process of relaying it out.
Okay.
But that's a guess.
It sounds like a good one. Another one is kind of excess event listeners. And any questions so far? All right. So another kind of performance loss is due to a lot of extra listeners. So here, say you had a div with 20 LIs that all had anchors in them. The first one would attach an individual listener to each one. And with 20, it's not so bad, but imagine 200. And then it starts becoming an issue. So instead of going that route, if you use the delegate, here what it does is that it attaches one listener to the container, and then it'll listen for the li anchor, and you click on one, that event bubbles up and it's captured and handled by the function. And that way you only have one listener as opposed to, n. Okay. And then the other part of the LinkedIn JS guidelines is, addresses readability and maintainability. And then I guess that ends up affecting maintainability. And here's simple ternaries. It's a really neat tool, and you want to cram everything in there. But they can get unreadable really quickly because one ternary and then another and another and another, and then soon you're 3 lines and have to spend 30 minutes figuring out what's going on. And the rule of thumb that I've seen is that if you're changing function execution or the execution path, ternary is not a good way to go. But if you're just, say, setting a variable or property that ends up setting a variable, using the ternary is a good idea. And like I said before, with the changing the kind of execution path, not very good, just because it makes it hard to read. And in that case, you would use just a if-else. Questions thus far? This one's a good one. Using the braces. Here, this is pretty easy to see that you could end up, say, even formatting it that way, but looking at it might, somebody looking at it just quickly could think that B runs right after C, but not always. Just because really what's happening is this, but you writing it out explicitly is a lot clearer. That way you can look at it and know what's going on. Nothing that's rocket science. So. And as with all good things, there are evil parts and those you want to avoid. And I chose 2. There's more than 2. But eval is bad, namely because it allows you to just do a lot of bad things. So you can, put in all like strings that are really functions, and eval will make them real in JavaScript land. And then started off as a really good idea. It allows you to work in scope of, or within the context of, say, within a context of element. So you could iterate within the things of inside that element or object, but it has memory leaks, so we want to avoid using that. So that about wraps it up, but just remember that standardization is cool. Any questions?
Do you have a document, a wiki on this or something?
Yes. There is one there, and Go standards. And JavaScript, the good parts, goes deeper into why some of the things, more if you want to look at more in-depth look at why eval or with are bad things. That's a really good reference.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Thanks.
Yeah.